So, a bit of background on this workshop. The title of this is How to Build a PLG-native CRM in Attio. It's really going to be an overview of all things PLG and CRM focused on Attio. I'll kick things off with some brief slides to give some context on what I'm going to talk about. I will then walk you through an example Attio demo workspace that builds out some of the workflows we're talking about. And let's get stuck in. So PLG and CRM. Now, there are a lot of acronyms in go-to-market generally, and especially in this bit of it. So I just want to talk briefly about what we actually mean by product-led growth as opposed to sales-led growth. What we see in practice is that this is always a spectrum, so it might be helpful to just walk through this spectrum and see the different kinds of growth models that we might want our company to have. So first up, on the very sales-led side, you could have a fully sales-led outbound process. And this sales model, we can notice a couple of things. Firstly, it's very structured into particular roles. We have, SDRs at top of funnel, AEs selling, potentially SEs pulled in for technical support, and then a handover onto a CSM. So very structured, and our customers' experience of the product is fully controlled by our sales team. And this is the kind of sales process that we might want to run in Salesforce. A variant on this would be a still sales-led approach, but using inbound. HubSpot obviously pioneered inbound sales. And if you visit the HubSpot website, you'll see, a demo booking form that you can use to book a sales call with them and kick off a subsequent primarily sales-led process, but with more of an inbound marketing element. So if we jump over right to the opposite end of the spectrum, what does a pure PLG model look like? Well, in this situation, it's less structured, and our customers' experience of the product is much more autonomous. It doesn't depend on salespeople at all. So customers are able to navigate to our site, sign up, and pay, but also expand their usage without talking to a salesperson, maybe just occasionally reaching out to support if they need help there. And there are customers like Atlassian and Notion that have very successfully scaled to hundreds of millions in revenue without having a sales team. But the reason I added an asterisk here is that pretty much every company eventually does end up adding a sales team past a certain level of scale. And for most of the customers that we talk to, they will typically start with a hybrid approach. And this is the approach that Attio itself implements. Again, one that's very popular with our customers, and you'll sometimes hear this called product-led sales as opposed to product-led growth. Many possible customer journeys, but you can see an example one here. So customer arrives at a website through organic inbound content. They will create a free trial and share that workspace with their team. And the sales team will want to pay close attention to their product usage so that they can surface what are called PQLs, product qualified leads, and initiate a sales conversation there. In practice, though, this kind of hybrid motion is often relatively free-flowing, and it might be that PQL doesn't go anywhere, but that later down the line, the customer finally does come inbound and requests to talk to sales. And so what we really don't want at this stage is for our sales rep to lack all of this prior context that our customer has with our product. Obviously, our customer is autonomous. They're able to explore this product on our own. We need to surface all of that context to our sales team. And secondly, we want to ensure that we have smooth handovers at every stage. We want to ensure that, our product data is handed over cleanly to our sales rep, but that when our customer eventually pays, we have a really smooth transition from being a prospective customer to an ongoing customer. And this is not something that just happens by itself. This requires a little bit of thought. And the pattern that we want to avoid is having a kind of two-pronged business where we've got a sales end and a product end. We want to really combine those together and have that be, like a seamless experience for our customer. So what data are we interested in? Obviously, this is a CRM workshop. We're, interested in how we actually build this into our own CRM. So data we might be interested in. We might be interested in how our customer arrived at our website. In other words, we want to do attribution. We need to be able to model users of our product in our CRM, which sounds simple. But in traditional CRMs that rely on people or companies rather than users or workspaces, this can be a little bit tricky. And we're particularly interested in workspaces since if we're running a B2B SaaS product, as many of us are, this is how we bill and get paid. And finally, we need to make sure that all of this information is joined together properly. We need to make sure that we're defining these users and workspaces and deals and also linking those together nice and cleanly. So that hopefully sets some context about what I'm going to be showing you today. So let's take a look at what this looks like in practice. Now, ideally here, I would be able to run you through our own Attio instance and show you our own sales motion, which, as I said, is this kind of product-led sales approach. Since I can't do that, I've got hopefully the second best, which is a reasonably built out demo workspace that can run through some of these sales flows. And hopefully this will put into context some of these questions that we get around, why do I need the user and workspace objects? Why are these helpful? And how should I actually implement these in practice? Obviously, this is just one approach and you'll want to tailor this to your business, but hopefully working through this example can make that a little bit more concrete. And again, if you have any questions, definitely call them out and very happy to dig into the technical details of how you actually get this set up. So with that said, I will exit out of this presentation and navigate over to my Attio instance. So here we see a view of this demo workspace I've built entitled Model Flow. And here we're looking at our workspaces. So these are the team accounts of our imaginary customers in our product. And you can see we're tracking some attribution data, some usage data, and some data that we could use to know something about customer health. We've also got users and deals set up, and we're using inbound leads for our sales motion. We've got this customer success list, which is a list of workspaces. And we've also set up some reports so that we can report, for instance, on our workspace sources. So let's really quickly run through our new customer lifecycle and use that to show a little bit about how this CRM instance is connected together. So we're running a product-led sales, hybrid product-led growth motion. So our leads for sales are going to come from two sources. And the first source that they might come from is from the submission of our contact sales form. So let's run through that now and see what that looks like. So I've built out this fill out form just as an example. Typically for our customers that are using web forms, fill out and type form are both very popular. And we've got native integrations for both of those. So that's pretty straightforward. You'll see here that I've set up this integration to sync directly to inbound leads. And so when I submit this form, we'll get a new entry in our inbound lead objects, which is capturing that context from that form. We're also pulling in here information about the workspaces that this email address is linked to. So here right out of the gate, we're making sure that we capture all of that context about what this customer has already done in our product. We're also automatically creating a deal in our pipeline. And if we click into that deal, you can see here that we've configured this tab so that we're pulling in all the context from that inbound lead. I don't want to go too deep into this because there are a few ways you can structure this. But using an inbound lead custom object can be helpful if you just want to have a really clear record of all of your leads. You could use a list, you could use the deals object directly. But because there's a decent amount of context that you want to track here, I think having a dedicated object is quite helpful. So one detail here that's worth mentioning is that the workspace field linked to a deal is quite important if you're running a product-led sales process. And that's because if you're working on upgrading a self-serve customer to enterprise, you need to be really specific about what customer workspace you are actually upgrading. So we've got here information on all of the customers' previous workspaces so that our salesperson can dig into that and understand that context. But we also need to manually set the workspace that we're actually going to be upgrading. So we've got that one-to-many link there. So let's fill out some of these fields and move this deal through our pipeline. And prior to moving this to close one, we'll want to make sure that we've got those fields filled out properly. So we'll see that if we move that to closed one without our required fields, this will be moved back. And we see the same thing there if we didn't fill out our workspace. So we'll fill out that deal value, move that over to closed one. And this will run our workflow for assigning this over to our customer success manager, and also notifying in Slack that this has actually occurred. And this workflow has a few steps, so it might take a couple of moments to run. But we can take a look at a moment at how we've set that up specifically. If we take a look at our visible columns, then you'll see here we've got this column of handed to CS. And having this additional column allows us to ensure a nice, smooth handover. So you'll see here we've got a Slack notification when we first submitted our contact sales form. And that's nicely formatted. So we're tagging the user, we're linking to the deal in Attio. And we've also got this Slack notification for a new enterprise customer where we're tagging both the AE, the deal owner, and the CSM. And so simple details like this can make a huge difference to how your sales process goes. Things like, making sure to tag both the AE and CSM, as well as just having this clearly formatted and available for your team, I think is super, super helpful. And happy to talk through how I built that handover workflow if you're interested. As we mentioned, we're using a list of workspaces for customer success here. And so when we moved that to closed one, we automatically created a new record in our customer success list. Obviously, that's using Glow AI, the workspace that I set just there. And so, or it might have been Nova AI, I'm not sure. But yeah, either way, so this will automatically hand over that workspace to customer success and assign a CSM. And this is where we'd also want to sequence the customer. And again, on the theme of smooth handovers, immediately send them an onboarding email, just introducing that CSM and kicking off that onboarding process. So that would be the lifecycle from lead to CSM handover. The other way that we might create a lead here would be through a PQL. So we don't need to run through the whole process again for you, but we've configured a trigger here, which looks at the number of seats we've got for our pro customers. So you'll see that if I increase this number of seats to 12, we'll automatically create a new deal. This has been resorted in our list, but I think this was the one. Yeah, so we've created this deal. We've automatically set the workspace in this case because we know who it is, and we've set the type to PQL. So if we want to start reporting on our deals by type, then we can do that as well. Okay, so that was a super quick overview of our lead lifecycle. Took a very brief look at marketing and attribution, worked through both of our deals pipelines, and we've also looked at the handover to customer success. And we've also looked at some alerting that we can do at every stage of this process for PQLs, for contact sales forms, and for new deals that have been moved to closed one. And this is orchestrated within Attio workflows. So we've set up a few workflows here which are managing this process. And just to briefly dive into those. In general, the theme that we're looking at here is we will trigger our workflow. We will do some routing logic to decide who this should be handed over to. In this case, I'm using a round robin, of which I'm the only member, but we might also want to route based on seniority, geography, and so on. And then taking some actions inside Attio, and finally posting a message to Slack to notify the team. And this is a pretty good format for most of our Slack workflows. One in particular that might be interesting is this one, which we use for a handover. So what we'll do here is we will check when deal stage is moved to handed to CS. And so we've got this intermediate stage, which we're doing our routing logic in and selecting our CSM. And this means that when we notify Slack, we're able to say, okay, here is the AE and here is the CSM. which requires us to do that in the deals object. I hope that makes sense. Can dig in more later. So what you might be wondering, having seen this, and which I hope you're wondering, is how do I get started with using workspaces and users? And in brief, there are two parts to this. The first is doing a one-time migration of data from your database into these two objects. And the second is setting up an integration for ongoing sync of that information. So let's take a look at what we would need to do that. So for workspaces, in terms of our required attributes, we've got a required attribute of workspace ID. So this is the primary key of this workspace in our database. And this is distinct from the record ID, which is an Attio detail we don't need to think about. And then we've also got additional information that we're tracking about this workspace, such as our UTM params that we're using for our marketing dashboard. And this is a similar situation for users. We, again, are tracking the user ID corresponding to the primary key in our database. The difference here is we've also got to track an email address. And for both users and workspaces, we will probably want to add a field for sign-up dates to distinguish from when the user was created from when it was created in Attio. So migrating that data in on a one-time basis is pretty simple. Regardless of what database you're using, whether it's Postgres, MySQL, you will be able to perform a CSV export from your database. And once you've done that and you've selected those fields that we looked at just now, you'll need to open up your CSV and load it in. So you can see an example here for workspaces. You'll see we've got workspace ID. We've got that sign up date field as distinct from created at, and we're also mapping some other fields. Essentially, always we'll have a plan field to distinguish what plan our customer is on. So CRM migrations can feel a bit scary, and they're not anyone's favorite activity. But I will say that migrations for workspaces and users tend to be among the simplest because the fields that you need are simple. And if you have a database of workspace and users, you're guaranteed to have these fields already set up. So this is much simpler than like migrating deals in from another CRM, for instance. This stage, super straightforward. The next and probably more important part is setting up an integration to sync data from workspaces, from your database into workspaces and users in an ongoing basis. Now, again, can go more into detail on this if you have a specific question on it. But very briefly, what you will need is, firstly, a code snippet that you can install on your website to send events back to Attio. Pardon me. It's highly likely that you already have one for this purpose if you're a SaaS company of a sufficient size. It could be June, Posthog, Segment. And yeah, you will also, if you want to track marketing attribution specifically, you'll also need a cookie so that you can track that data. So if we look at one possible setup of that with Posthog, you'll see we've got our Posthog dashboard, and Posthog is a tool for gathering and analyzing product data. And you can see that we're taking in events from our website, and we've defined some mappings in the Posthog UI, which map those to Attio data. So we've got those attributes that we talked about with regards to users. We've got email and ID, as well as our custom attributes, which we could add more of here. And for workspace, we are mapping in, again, workspace ID and our UTM parameters. We've also added some additional optional attributes just so we can ensure that data is closely related together. This is just Posthog. There are several other ways that you could do this. Our segment connector is very popular, but regardless of what tool you're using, you'll need to first figure out if your team already do have such a tool installed. If not, install it. You'll then need to go to the UI and set up these mappings from that tool over to your Attio objects. And you'll then need to test and verify that those attributes are actually coming through by looking at your activity tab, going over back to your site, signing in, and verifying that that is in fact coming through. Yeah, when it comes to marketing attribution data, the situation there requires a couple of extra steps. So yeah, I can go into those if people are more interested. And yeah, it might be worth having a specific workshop just for that one. Yeah, thanks so much for your time, and hope to see you at the next one. Yeah, thanks a lot.